So, March 23rd of 2023 was the day I first took Vyvanse for the first time. It was the first time that I'd been prescribed any sort of stim for my mental health, and it was truly, in a lot of ways, a life-changing prescription. So, just to get a bit more of an understanding, growing up, I was always a quiet kid. Everyone called me shy, all that stuff. I never felt shy. I just was very quiet. Didn't know how to start conversations. I still don't. But, yeah, there was just something different about me. But I was normal. Like, there's nothing off. It was just, I could feel there was something, a barrier of some sort between me and the world. And as I grew up, I could feel it more and more in a lot of different ways. In my late teens, I started seeking help for my mental health because it was going way downhill. When I turned around about 20, I tried to get really, I'm 35 right now, so this is like 15 years ago. I tried to really find out how I could go through and help my mental health, because I didn't want to keep living like that. So at that time, I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was sent to a psychologist, I believe, in a mental health building. And it was like the whole building just felt wrong. Like, you walk past padded rooms and things like that. And it just felt like, again, I didn't belong necessarily there. I felt very, like if I said the wrong thing, that's exactly where I was going to just be led, is to one of those rooms. And at first the medication that I was prescribed then worked really well. In terms of, I didn't overthink. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I was sleeping. It wasn't like 3 hours of like just struggling to sleep. So at first it was great. But after a few months, the medication kept going up and up and up. And I think I was at like 1,500 for the dose. And I told the doctor that, you know, I'm not liking how I'm feeling. I'm feeling very robotic. If I laugh, it's not coming from inside. It's because I understand everyone's laughing kind of deal. So it was a very shelled feeling. And I did not like it. It was dangerous, I think. But he insisted, you know, we were nowhere near the dose he wanted me on. And he wanted me on at least a 3,000 milligram or whatever dose of the medication. And it felt like I was very much just not listened to. So that was a horrible experience for me. I ended up just slowly weaning myself down off that medication and stopping going to him because I just felt gaslit. And again, 15 years ago, mental health was nowhere near where it is at this point. Like, simply in the last 5 years, it's changed a lot. But that being said, that puts a huge damper on me trying to continue getting help. I just went with what I could do for myself. I tried meditating. I tried different grounding techniques that I learned on the internet. There was so many things. In the midst of anxiety attacks, I'd be clapping my hands, trying to be like, bring myself back to kind of reality. Just something physical, you say something out loud, all that stuff. Like I tried that stuff so hard, and nothing would take away the anxiety. Well, yeah, the anxiety that was just there all the time. And then when I was about 23, 24, I guess, my best friend from childhood, he took his life. And after that happened, I really knew I needed to start working again on my mental health, because I didn't want to hurt the ones I loved the way I felt hurt after he left. Not that I'm putting that on him. He had his own sadness. So, but I didn't want others to feel that way because of me. So, I think I went on Effexor around then. Was on that for so long. I went on some kind of sleeping pill too to help me sleep. It was like you take it an hour before you go to bed, and then if you're not feeling sleepy within half an hour, you take a second, and that worked out okay for a bit in terms of mental health, I guess. Maybe not. I was just pushing through. But anyone who has one anxiety attack, we're not talking panic attack. To me, panic attacks is something like you feel panic in you, and then you get up and start doing something, and it starts to come down. Anxiety attacks, it's like all your adrenaline gets dumped into your system, and something really bad's going to happen, and it's probably happening right now. And you just need to get out of it. And then after your anxiety attack, you're drained. Like, you have no energy at all. You kind of just need to sleep because of all that, everything, and adrenaline going through you. At my worst, I was having 6 to 10 or more a day of like solid 45-minute anxiety attacks of feeling like I'm gonna die right now. And then I was still trying to work on top of it. It was completely draining. So I tried going on and off antidepressants from the time I was like 24 to 30. I think I switched between like Effexor, and then now I'm on citalopram, and I've been on that for quite a few years. Again, not that it helps, but it takes away some of my anxiety. But that's when, after I had my first daughter, I was feeling pretty good. I think I had her just before I turned 30. And she gave me a lot of self-confidence in myself. There's just so many things about her that just made me believe in myself, know that I was able to be somewhat of a normal person. You know, it was the first time I felt that I could look at myself and feel truly beautiful, because how could she be so beautiful if I wasn't? Because I made her, like. But, so she did a lot of great things for me. But in that time after her, I found out I had borderline, I think it's hypertension, high blood pressure. So it was like high, but just below the high. It was like normal, but just below high. So simply going for a walk upstairs and then coming back and getting my blood work done, it was like beyond high. My resting heartbeat was always like 90. Like, this was a continuous thing. Didn't matter what I did for activities, how fit I was, my blood pressure and my heart rate were always high as like resting. So, in 2019, I had the greatest year at first, and then it was just shit. It went from the most incredible joy of my life, being my youngest daughter being born, and then within 24 hours of giving birth to her, it just so happened that our family dog from when I was a kid had to be put down. So I helped my brother get her to the vet so that she could be put down, and all that fun stuff. I had emotions just going right through me, because you're doing the hormone dump right after you have a kid and all that stuff. Yeah. But 14 days after 14 days after she was born, my youngest brother hung himself. I have a big family. I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters. But he was my closest brother. He was my closest family member. There was just something that, pretty much since he was born, we just had a connection. That was in 2019. I fucking hate Mother's Day. I can't be happy during it. It's just his anniversary of his passing. Anyways, I think you get to a point where you're so sad and numbed by life, you just sometimes pick something to get you through. So in my case, I use my youngest as my push through. You know, I can't completely completely disconnect because I was breastfeeding, so she needs to be breastfed and blah, blah, blah. But I felt very alone because I didn't feel like I could ask family to help with babysitting or anything, 'cause they're also mourning. And then, 2020 COVID hit, so on top of all that, I became more isolated because we weren't visiting everyone or anything. Not that we always did anyways, we live off grid, so, but just simply getting out to have that little break at any time. My mom works at a retirement home as well, a long-term care facility, so she had to take extra precautions during that time. So it was even more, we couldn't just go and see them because if the girls had a cough or mom had a cough, couldn't. So yeah, I took essentially the next 18 months where my sole focus was breastfeeding. Like, I had nothing other than that to keep me going. Like my spouse, he's fantastic. My oldest daughter, like, they're all reasons why I want to keep going. Like, but at that point, the only thing that I felt I was capable of doing and had worth in doing was just breastfeeding. So, and usually that time during breastfeeding was just my time to cry. It was just me and my daughter, and then I'd just cry on her while she ate. But there comes a time when you've gone through so many false floors thinking you've hit the bottom with your depression that it starts getting hard to feel like tomorrow is going to be any better than today. You get burnt out and drained. No matter how hard you do it, how hard you push forward, how hard you try and be in the moment and appreciate the moments. It wasn't enough for me. So, 2020, probably the end of that, I realized I had to do something to have me time. I went almost 2 years without having any sort of time for myself, other than going outside for 5 minutes at a time to maybe weed my garden and cry. So I knew I needed to do something really big, really drastic, to give myself a reason to look forward to tomorrow. So that's when I decided I'm gonna start really jumping into camping and canoeing. I didn't have anything, and I was determined that by the next canoe season in 2021, as long as COVID restrictions allowed it, I was going to start doing that because I needed me time desperately. I think I decided canoeing as well because you always hear everyone say, if you're sad, go out in the woods for a few nights, a week, whatever, and you'll come back and you won't need the antidepressants and you'll be happy. Well, I got my times. I got out canoeing next year. I had planned a full season and I jumped in hard, way past my skill level, way past my physical level, but I did it. I had to do it. Like, there's no going around it. So, my first trip, I didn't listen to any music at all. I usually don't. And for 6 days, maybe 5 days, I had Coco Melon songs only in my head. Maybe a couple other kid ones. And it was just constant kid songs. There was no other commentary going on. And it was probably the last day heading out on my last portages to get to the vehicle that an actual song for me finally popped in my head. Which is, it's funny because, like, I was arguing with myself for that entire trip. Like, why are you lit? You got away from the kids so you could have you time. And now all you're doing is singing Coco Melon and all those kid songs in your head. But I guess it probably showed just how much I needed it. But, so, my canoe trips, I learned a lot from them the first year. I learned that through trying to get me time, I had a hard time accepting it. Like, I felt like I was abandoning my family, which made me feel worse, even though, like, I truly believe that my girls deserve a role model that they can look up to, where they can see, okay, mom's going for some mom time. And when they grow up, they can feel like that is totally acceptable. To have a break from whatever you're doing and go and focus on you. I really want them to have that mentality. But it did not help the trips when I was really down and out. One of my worst trips that first year, it was my turning point of when I really knew I had to advocate for myself a lot more about getting different help for my mental health. Because that trip was a solo trip, which I do a lot of trips, especially at the start, solo, because I have no friends. No, but just because. And it felt, once I got to camp, I was feeling down, but when I got to camp, it just felt worse in terms of I didn't feel safe. I I wasn't going to do anything to myself, but it just felt like death was watching very, very closely that trip. And I could feel the weight of it. And it's like my bag, that trip felt like I was carrying the world. And to feel like that when you're at home is bad enough. There's always different times when you can feel that if you're doing like an activity or whatever, and you take that as a reason to, okay, I need to be more careful. But the way I was feeling it was just not good. And being alone by myself, I think I only got tiny blips of signal at the time, so I couldn't try and like simply YouTube heartwarming videos. Sometimes that just, lifts you up a bit, soldiers coming home or whatever, really heartfelt things. Couldn't do any of that. The book I decided to bring was like a shit book. I did not enjoy it at all. Like, I don't know if I didn't enjoy it or if I just didn't enjoy it because I wasn't feeling that trip. Like, I don't remember much of the book. I don't remember what it was called. But if I ever seen it again, I'll probably never read it again because of my experience reading it with that trip. Yeah, that was 2021. 2022, I continued a lot the same way. Just as soon as my camping trips were done in 2021, I went right into planning again for the next year. And it was fine. 2022 was the first year I started filming my canoe trips and stuff, in my very limited knowledge of doing that. I don't know anything about filming, editing, all that's, I might as well be learning a new language with it. But the reason why I did that is because so many people my first year were just amazed by the fact that I was doing it by myself. I was going for multiple days, not just like one or two. And I was traveling and portaging the whole time, not just going to an easier camp and base camping. So after having almost every trip, meeting someone on a portage or whatever, saying like, oh, that's such an inspiring thing, I wish I could do that. And from men and women. Like, one woman was insisting like I had to have been a military girl, because only someone so strong could go out and do that kind of thing. No. But I had groups of guys being like, I would never do that on my own. Like, you're crazy. But to each their own, whatever. But that's what made me really want to start filming, so that maybe anyone who just doesn't have people to go along with them, or can't find time to work with people to go on trips with them, maybe get inspired a bit more to do more solo trips and just try it out. Yeah, 2022, it was just a lot of ups and downs. Nothing crazy, but I struggled hard with my mental health still. I believe that was the time when my doctor and I were trying to get me to wean down to see how I'd go to on my medication, which ended up being bad. And then, yeah, essentially 2023 came in, and my mental health not only got worse, it started getting more intrusive with my thoughts that would literally just pop in out of nowhere. You know, like I'm having a sad day and I'm trying to take in a moment of my girls coloring with me and just try to really appreciate the cuteness and everything else. And then just having like that intrusive thought of they'd be more happy if there wasn't someone sad around them all the time. Or just things like that. Which I know aren't true, but yeah. So around the end of 2022, 2023, I started learning more about ADHD and autism. Just trying desperately to figure out myself, seeing how I felt very stuck with the doctor. Not her fault. She's a family doctor. She's not like mental health orientated, whatever. She's just doing her thing. She gets her 15 minutes, whatever. But so I was doing my own research. I wanted to go and provide information to try and see about doing something different. Because antidepressants alone, although they helped maybe give me like shitty life wings to tread water a little easier, it was no way a life preserver. It was like they were probably leaking. And there's so many times where you start to maybe struggle to tread the water, metaphorically. And then maybe you get a little tired and you bob under. But you come back up and get your breath, you're good. And suddenly those bobs start being a little slower. And you start to just go down maybe a little deeper each time. That's the best way I could explain it. And it wasn't going to get me through anything. And I'm tired of living like being sad. I'm tired of being my own worst critic. I'm tired of not liking myself for being so different and not knowing how to explain my difference. So I stumbled upon some information about ADHD first. And I was ignoring the autism just because it's like everything I was seeing, it was like men. This is what you do. This is how it's seen, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, not that. But the ADHD seemed to like, that's interesting. Rings kind of true to me. But there are a lot of things, again, where it was just like, you know, you're supposed to be hyperactive and you're supposed to be this and that, and I was not. I'm a very internal person. I go inwards with everything. Probably hyperactively. But, and then just out of nowhere, I stumbled upon this one woman. I think she runs the channel How to ADHD. Something along those lines. Like, she was the first person that I seen that was a female and just trying to explain ADHD in different scenarios and stuff. And that's when I really started thinking, like, maybe I have ADHD. But then I got into the whole mindset of, like, well, it's not a big deal. Like, tons of people have ADHD. You can just live with it. It's not, you don't need help with it, blah, blah, blah. Kind of old school thinking. Stuff that was kind of put into my mind when I was a kid. You know, you only want the diagnosis for the stims, blah, blah, blah. And finally, I felt like I had enough information to ask my doctor to get tested with ADHD. So she gave me a form to fill out. Very out of date form, I think, because it was for ADD. And yeah, that was pretty much everything was in the almost everyday experience every day. It's the same kind of check the box thing as any depression form or anxiety form. It's the exact same, just it's like 6 questions. So I fill out that form. The doctor and I have a conversation about how I just have no energy. Like, I can be awake for an hour after sleeping and then just be right asleep for a couple hours. Like, I need multiple naps a day to just stay awake. And then I started drinking a ridiculous amount of coffee, because coffee's supposed to give you energy. So, you know, I have 2 kids under 5 and just trying to run with them and burning out hard. Beyond burning out hard. And yeah, so she asks me how many coffees I drink a day. And I tell her the fact that, like, well, if I can stay up until noon, I can drink a good 5 cups of coffee. And then have a really good nap. But they never kept me up. It was just, they got me to a point where I just needed to nap. And then she gave a little giggle, said, oh, maybe you've been compensating naturally for ADD. I was like, what? So I had to get some tests, blood tests, and a heart ECG or something like that to make sure I don't have any heart murmurs and stuff. And before I was given the Vyvanse, the first, I wasn't told like much of anything about the medication at all. Like, I was told I might want to slow down on my coffee intake. And then I was told in very vague ways of if I'll only get like 28 days worth of a prescription if it goes missing or is used too quickly, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's not gonna re-prescribe anything, and this went right over my head. She was speaking a different language at that point, because I was like, why would I? And there's rules, like, if you take it anywhere, make sure it's not in its original bottle so that no one can see what it's called. Like, yeah, all going over my head. I'm just dumbfounded by what's being said to me. And finally, she's like, you understand? I was like, no. She's like, if you sell it or anything, I'm not re-prescribing you before it's due again. Oh, that's what you meant. You don't want people to be selling the prescriptions. understandable. No, this is my lifeline. But yeah, felt like a complete idiot there because like I said, it went right over my head. Oh. Yeah, so I go home, get my prescription. I don't have insurance, so like 1 month of the prescription's like $158 at the time. Now it's $250 because my prescription gone up. But yeah, I was thinking like this better be freaking worth it, because wow, that's a lot of money. And I was expecting, like antidepressants, you need 4 to 6 weeks to start feeling it, and blah, blah, blah. Take my first pill, and within 2 hours, I felt like Superman shooting up out of that fucking hole I'd been buried in for 15 years to life. I felt myself fly. Yes, I was high, but in a good way. I felt all those weights come off me. And then I just felt this flow of understanding behind some of my emotions and things that were said or things that were told to me when I was like really little about how it was different. I was like, well, now there's a reason. I have ADHD. There was a reason why I was different. You know, it makes sense why I was always able to take everyone's ideas and put them together like it was nothing, because there was a problem that needed solving, and I can solve problems. That's why I could, learn a job faster than anyone else. But within 3 months, I was bored and then back in my head. And then depressed. Like those times of when dopamine's the best, I felt those ups. And then when I didn't get those dopamine hits, I just continually went down. And my dopamine hits aren't the same as your average person's. I don't get a dopamine hit from, good job cleaning the house, or I don't get the normal hits of it as most people do. So this is a lot longer than I was expecting. I don't talk about anything. I know I rambled. I'm gonna edit this severely probably. So Vyvanse. Other than taking off after experiencing Vyvanse and having it take off this, it was like this barrier of saran wrap that was just stretched so tight. No one could see it, but there was something there. And it's like that's been finally taken off, peeled off. And although I'm still very different than most people, maybe not most people, but a lot of people, there was reasons. There wasn't a feeling of just being trapped. But yeah, some other things that I've noticed with Vyvanse. Since going on Vyvanse, I am extremely, extremely surprised by the fact of how it's affected my heart rate and blood pressure. Because earlier in this, I was saying I had pretty much from my teens all the way up to forever, my entire life, I've had a high resting heart rate, being if I had my resting heart rate down to 85, that was good. Yeah. anything, like taking a deep breath could raise it to 90. But it was just always high. Didn't matter how much I walked, hiked, biked, anything. I was always out and about exploring, and it was always just high. And same with my blood pressure. My blood pressure was always like 180 to 189 over like 80. So like, it just stayed right at that like high normal. So like for my firstborn, I had to go on. Well, I had to monitor my blood pressure very closely because I was how do you say that? I had a good chance of having preeclampsia. So, going on Vyvanse now, my resting heart rate from a stim. Stims are supposed to make you go like crazy. Not crazy, but like make you hyperactive. My blood pressure is like 170 over 60. My resting heart rate is like 60. That it's an interesting physical change that I noticed right at. And I noticed this right at Vyvanse because I had all those tests before I was allowed to go on it. And it was still exactly the same as it was for years. But the fact that Vyvanse was able to do that for me is amazing. My anxiety's down a lot. It's not gone. I don't think it'll ever be gone, unfortunately. But I can manage it a lot better now in terms of I can feel more when it's around. Like, I always have some anxiety, like, I feel it in the background. There's just, like, a constant, 2 to 4 in the background. That's just, like, waiting to push through. But that's better than the solid 10 I was trying to push back on a regular basis. And then, wake up in the middle of the night out of a dead sleep with an anxiety attack for what I could tell was no reason. I'm just going to wrap this up pretty much after this, but the last thing I've really noticed since taking Vyvanse and being on it for, 7 months, 8 months, I guess 9 months, it's like my entire life, I've always had a very self-critical mindset. I've always been my worst critic. It didn't matter how much praise I got for like doing something good. My mind would just flip it and reverse it and be like, well, you could have done this better. You should have done this better. Like, it didn't matter. It's always looking for solutions to problems that aren't even there but can make things more efficient. Just constantly going. And as I got older, that self-critical part of me got really bad. It's like, at some points, something in my head gave it a megaphone. So now it's just like, that's all I could hear is every one of my flaws just being yelled at me 24/7. And taking Vyvanse was like giving my brain something to just go up to it and throat punch it. So it's still there. It's like not as loud as my other thoughts can be now, which is beautiful. I can sit and let my thoughts just kind of flow quietly in the morning now with my coffee. Whereas before there was never a quiet just flow of thoughts. It was always very self-critical thoughts and very I don't know. I was my own worst bully. I definitely took everything that was ever said to me when I was younger to heart. To very much heart. And I think those moments of bullying, criticizing when I was a kid really gave that voice the bigger jump to that being as loud as it was. But yeah, so now that I guess I'm technically not diagnosed with ADHD. I just did the test. I don't have like a clinical diagnosis. So that's fun. But like it's not through a psychologist or a mental health doctor or anything like that. It's just through the family doctor, and it's just she's decided to prescribe me that. So that being said, now that I've been diagnosed with ADHD and I understand more about how I am as a person, just naturally, I definitely have high suspicion of autism as well. Yep. There's just so many things that go along with it. And so that's my next thing, is just trying to get diagnosis to validate myself more, for one. And try and find resources that I wasn't given as a kid growing up. You know, I didn't get all those techniques or whatever. I was able to just flow through as like a weirdo, quiet person that, you know, as long as she was left alone, she could do her thing. But what I'm trying to just get out in general is don't give up on yourself. Sometimes doctors just don't understand. And they can't understand if they only get the 15 minutes and stuff. They need you to be very, very vocal, very much advocating for yourself so that they can understand, I think. Maybe that's not the case with all doctors. I don't know. But, and I'm not saying vocal or anything like that in terms of like angry. I'm not an angry person. I'm a person that's like, if I bring facts to a professional and they just kind of pass it off like, nah, it can't be that. What do I know? I'm not a professional. So take the doctor's word. And I need to stop that. Because mental health, I believe, you need two sides to it. You can't just have the professional side saying yes, no. You need the side that's trying to heal to be just as present and just as a part of the treatment, so that the doctor can help you as best as they can.